I'm going to describe a pretty cool feature in the Spring Wiz here. It's called Find a Spring. A lot of you may not want to actually go through all of this to find out that your spring pack isn't right. You say, well, can't you find the spring for me automatically? And to some extent it can. It can at least get you in the ballpark. And if you click on this Find a Spring checkbox up here, it gives you a little overview of what's going to happen. But you're going to put in some specs about what kind of spring you want the program to look for. And you're going to say, I want to find a spring for the intake, and this has to do with what profile, cam profile, intake or exhaust profile it's going to put it on. It says, give me some idea of what seated forces are acceptable to you. So you say, okay, start at 200 pounds force and go in 20-pound steps, and it shows you a little preview. That's going to go from 200 up to 580 pounds seated force. And you say, I want 20% safety margin to make sure that 20% more force than required to keep that valve train under control. And then an assumed natural frequency. Now this, like it says here, if you don't know, the little pop up here, so if you don't know, use 300, right? I'll do what it says here. And you've noticed a lot of these things, when you hover over something, a little explanation pops up for you. So let's go ahead now and find a spring. Like it says here, once you've got these checked that are entered, again you click on the cam valve train analysis. We've got our two different profiles here. We're going to do the analysis. We got our weights, different intake and exhaust weights, RPM ranges. And now we're going to do an analysis to try and find what do we need for this particular valve train and cam profiles to keep this thing under control as far as the valve spring is concerned. And you can see here's the stuff we've seen before. A lot of this stuff says see table below because it's based on the spring. A lot of this stuff isn't because this is based on the weights and the cam profiles that we're using in the RPM range. Well, if we go down here to the bottom, which is where the interesting thing is for Find a Spring, it says on that baseline spring, this basically has to do with on the intake cam profile with the intake valve train weights. It says if you have 200 pounds of seated force and you want to run at 9,000 RPM, you need a spring rate of 918 pounds per inch to give you 20% more force than needed. If you say, what's the exact force I need, you would put in a 0% safety factor. It would tell you exactly what is needed, but you would have no safety factor. And you can see here, as you allow the seated force to go up, let's say go to 400 pounds, you can see we need a lot less spring rate if you have a seated force of 400 pounds. You only need 620 pound per inch spring to give you that 20% safety factor. Now on the exhaust, because the weights are a little different, the profile is different, things are a little different. On the exhaust at 9,000 with 200 pounds of seated force, you'll need 841 pound per inch, and this is out of the whole spring pack, all 2 or 3 springs together, to give you 20% safety margin. And also, like it says here, you get up here at 400 pounds of seated force, you need that rate. So this will give you, write these numbers down, and then back out of here, close this, back out of here, and now you say, okay, let's turn off Find a Spring. Now you'd have something to shoot for over here for what kind of spring rate do I need, and what type of, refresh them by clicking on something. What kind of spring rate do I need with a certain seated force, that's installed force here, to produce the desired result for this particular valve train. And that's how you can more quickly find a certain spring to fit your particular application being this particular cam specs and these particular valve train weights. It's a very handy feature in the Spring Wiz program.